After watching this video, you walk into your IELTS speaking exam knowing exactly what's coming and how to give strong answers in parts 1, 2, and 3 using the English skills you already have. These strategies help thousands of our students reach Band 7, 8, or even 9, and I'm going to share them in this video. We'll start with part 1, and the beginning of your exam, which you can fully predict. Yes, I've taken the IELTS exam 7 times and it's always the same. And the former examiners I work with also confirm that in this part, they basically read from a script. So let me take you through the beginning of your exam, step by step. When you walk in, a quick hello or good morning is enough. You sit down, the examiner reads a short recorded statement. This exam is recorded, their name, the date, and so on. And then the identification questions begin. And one thing often surprises my students about these answers. So let me take you through each question and answer. Can you tell me your full name, please? My name is Alexandra Brown. What shall I call you? Please call me Alex. Where are you from? I'm from Kazakhstan. Can I see your identification? Yes, of course. Here you are, or here is my passport. So 2 quick things to remember. Say your name exactly as it appears in your passport. Middle name included if it's in your passport and nothing added if it's not. And the question, where are you from? Well, it doesn't require a long answer. Remember, this is just to identify you. And the real exam questions that determine your score start in a second. So this whole part takes about 30 seconds. And the cleaner you do it, the more time you save for the questions that actually matter. Part 1 of your IELTS speaking test lasts between 4 and 5 minutes and includes between 10 and 12 questions on 3 different topics. And the very first topic the examiner picks is one of 4. So let me show you all of them. After the ID questions, the examiner says, now, in this first part, I'd like to ask you some questions about yourself. And your first topic will be one of these: home, hometown, work, or studies. You get a choice between work and studies depending on what you're doing. But the rest is picked for you. Let's go through 4 sample answers. 2 for opening questions and 2 for follow-up questions. And each will teach you a specific thing that will help you improve your score. So for the topic of home, the opening question is, do you live in a flat or a house? And sometimes students answer with a single word, a house. It's correct, but it's too short. The examiner has nothing to assess. And the only extra question they can ask you is why? And if they keep on asking why, this isn't a great sign. So here is a simple way to handle it. You give your answer, you add a detail, and you briefly explain why yourself. So, I live in a house with my family. We moved there a few years ago because our old flat was a bit too small. This answer is natural, complete, and it doesn't sound rehearsed, which is very important. You don't want the examiner to think you've learned your answers by heart. They have to sound natural. Now, work or studies. The opening question is, do you work or are you a student? And 2 things may weaken your answer. So one is if your answer is too short, and we've just touched on that. And the other is if you prepare your answer so thoroughly and you really try to impress the examiner and you give lots of special terms or you're trying to say something smart, you shouldn't do that. So here is what a strong answer sounds like. I'm a student. And actually, I'm in the 2nd year of a bachelor's degree in computer science. At the moment, we're doing a lot of programming and problem solving, so it can be pretty challenging, but I'm really enjoying it. You give your answer and then you develop it a little bit. Yes, it's more than you would say in a normal conversation by, hey, it's an IELTS exam. And if you work, the same structure works for you. I work as what I do and how I feel about it. Now, the second and third questions in your topic are less predictable and they will test different language skills. So let me give you some common ones. Going back to the topic of home, your next question may be, what do you like best about your house? The temptation may be to mention several things. I like the bedroom and the garden and the neighborhood. A list. This doesn't demonstrate your English skills in the best way. A better approach is to pick one thing and expand it. For example, what I like most is the natural light. The living room has large windows, so it feels really bright and airy, especially in the morning. It just makes the whole place feel more open and welcoming. So you take one idea and you develop it naturally. And it's a much stronger answer. Now let's take a question that tests your ability to talk about a hypothetical, unreal situation. Would you like to live somewhere else in the future? A good way to answer this question and to show how good your English is to avoid saying, yes, I will move next year, or something similar that sounds too simplistic, unless it's true and you can back it up. Otherwise, try to soften your language. Use words like possibly, maybe, in the long term, for now, like this. Possibly, yes. In the long term, I'd like to live somewhere quieter, maybe in a small town, because I like having more space and a slower pace. But for now, the city makes more sense for work and opportunities. When you talk about a possible future this way, you naturally use more flexible and more complex grammar, which the examiner will notice. All four answers we've just looked at are around 20 to 25 seconds long. Some can be a little shorter, some a little longer, but that's a good average for part 1. Now, we're going to move on and talk about topics 2 and 3, which are much harder to predict. And you can find sample answers to all 4 topics your exam starts with, plus some other sample answers from this video in the Ultimate IELTS Playbook. This is a free companion PDF, and it will help you prepare not just for IELTS speaking, but for every part of your exam. And it will link to all the other videos in the Ultimate IELTS Guide series. I'll link it below. Now, about topics 2 and 3 in part 1. The examiner picks them before they even meet you, so it really is the luck. Some are easier to talk about than others. If you get reading, the cinema, or food, you've probably got plenty to say. If you got perfume or fishing, it's a different story. But the strategy is the same either way. Let me show you 2 examples. So let's start with adverts. Imagine the examiner asks, are there any ads you find particularly memorable? Here is a strong answer. I love adverts that have a real element of storytelling. So it's not just about the product being in your face. But maybe there is an emotion or a feeling or something that resonates with you within the advert. So that's a good answer. The vocabulary is natural. The sentences aren't that long, but it sounds fluent because of one thing in particular. So in your answer, use phrasal verbs and idiomatic expressions naturally when you can. Look at these phrases. In your face, resonate with you, a real element of storytelling. So these belong to what examiners call idiomatic language. And it's something they specifically listen for. You don't need big idioms like once in a blue moon. Small everyday phrasal verbs and expressions count just as much. Now, let's take a topic from the harder side of the list. Imagine you get asked about fishing and you've never been fishing in your life. I asked my friend Scarlett from England this very question, and here is the answer she gave. So the question was, is fishing a popular activity in your country? That's a hard question. For me personally, it's not something I would do, but I'm sure there are a lot of people in England who do go fishing. So notice what she did here. She bought herself a moment by saying, that's a hard question. And then she talked about her own experience briefly and pivoted to what other people do. So when you don't know much about a topic, talk about what other people do, not yourself. And use a few phrases to give yourself some thinking time. Here are a couple. That's an interesting one. I've never thought about it before. I'm not totally sure, but I'd say, to be honest, I haven't paid much attention to that, but off the top of my head, I'd say. So don't abuse these phrases. Don't start every answer with them. You're not going to get a high band for using these phrases, but they can buy you a bit of thinking time to give a good answer after. Part 1 is about yourself and your experiences. Short questions and short answers. The part that really shows your fluency is part 2. So you get a card and the instructions read, you will have to talk about the topic for 1 to 2 minutes. You have 1 minute to think about what you're going to say, and you can make some notes to help you if you wish. And then you read your topic. So part 2 is the so-called long turn. The instructions say to talk for 1 to 2 minutes, but here is one thing to know. Aim to talk for 2 minutes until the examiner stops you. Don't worry about finishing your answer. I know that sometimes students are worried about whether they'll get a topic they can actually talk about for 2 minutes. So sometimes I ask my students to vote for the topic they find harder. And this is one of the winners. The most dreaded topic I found so far. Describe a person who likes to grow plants. You should say who the person is, how you know the person, what type of plants he or she grows, and explain why growing plants is important for this person. So maybe you don't know anyone who grows plants. Maybe you don't know much about plants at all, especially in English. So what do you do? So first, look at the 4 bullet points. The first 2 are about a person, not about plants. So that's already half of your talk. And even the 3rd bullet point, it only asks about what they grow, not about how they grow them and describing the process of growing plants. IELTS is not a test of subject knowledge. It's a test of your English. So if you have some topic-specific vocabulary, great. If not, work around it. And here is something you should really know about part 2. There are 4 bullet points, but they're not equal. The first 2 are easier. who and how you know them. So they need simpler language. The third and fourth move into explaining what they grow and why it matters to them. So that's where more complex vocabulary and grammar fit in naturally, especially the last one. And here is an insider tip from a former IELTS examiner on our team. Make sure you cover the last point and explain why. Now, let's walk through a sample answer step by step. And after each one, I'll point out what makes it work. So, I'm going to talk about a neighbor of mine who's a keen gardener and in fact grows his own vegetables and some beautiful flowers. A simple opening that goes straight into the story. Notice that we've already got the phrase a keen gardener. That's someone who's very enthusiastic about gardening. He's quite old. He must be in his early 70s, I imagine, but he's very fit and active for his age. He's retired and lives with his wife, who's a really nice lady. Simple details, age, occupation, family, that's all the first bullet needs. And a natural way to talk about someone's age is in his early 70s. You can also say mid-70s or late 70s or 20s. And fit and active for his age is a good everyday collocation. It all sounds very natural. Now, bullet point 2, how you know the person. A little tip here. When you need to pick a person, don't say it's your close relative, because otherwise you just say, well, it's my mum. Then what? Pick someone else and then it's much easier to describe how you know this person. So this bullet point is great for using past tenses, and examiners specifically listen for that. So, I first met him when I moved in 6 months ago. The building has these nice gardens and I saw him there and we started talking. I told him I knew nothing about gardening and that I simply don't have green fingers. And he laughed and said that he would give me a few tips. Now, thanks to him, I'm the proud owner of 2 beautiful houseplants and maybe I could even grow my own vegetables. So we see a nice mix of past simple verbs: met, moved, saw, started, and so on. And we see some present comments that connect the past back to the present. I'm the proud owner. I could even grow. And there is a lovely idiomatic expression, to have green fingers. It means to be naturally good with plants. Bullet point 3 requires quite specific explanation as to what plants he or she grows. And there are 2 ways to go here. If you're really advanced and you have a very wide range of vocabulary, that's your opportunity to show topic-specific vocabulary. That would be a Band 9 version. If you don't have that kind of vocabulary, you can still pass your exam by giving a much simpler explanation. So I'm going to show them side by side and present the Band 9 version. Let's go. My friend has a small patch of his own in the far corner of the gardens. He grows carrots, potatoes, and onions. He showed me how to sow the seeds for them. There is a lot to learn about taking care of the soil, using natural compost as a fertilizer, and watering, of course. He also tends to the flower beds and helps to prune some of the trees we have growing there. But roses are his specialty. They're in bloom right now and they look absolutely stunning, not to mention the fragrance. There is a lot of topic-specific vocabulary here. Words like these really push your score up because the examiner specifically listens for less common vocabulary connected to the topic. But if you don't have this kind of vocabulary, you can still pause, and pause well, with a much simpler version on the other side of the screen. And I'm sure you know almost all of these words. If you'd like to read it, just pause the video now. Now let's talk about the most important bullet. Explain why growing plants is important for this person. Remember, always cover the last bullet point in your answer. That's where you get to show more complex language, like this. When I asked him whether all this was just a hobby or whether he did it to save money on food, he explained that he just loves doing what he does. But he's also a firm believer in eating natural, organically grown food. He never buys vegetables from the supermarket because they're kept in storage for ages and artificially treated to look fresh. Since he told me that, I've started thinking a lot more about what I eat. Notice the linkers: when, but, because, since. They're connecting the ideas together. And we also have some collocations: a firm believer, organically grown, kept in storage, artificially treated. And this is a very strong answer. When you're explaining why someone does something or why they feel a certain way about something, you naturally reach out for more complex vocabulary and grammar. Now, let's talk about the part where the examiner really pushes you to find out how good your English is. IELTS Speaking Part 3. Part 3 lasts between 4 and 5 minutes, just like Part 1. And the examiner will ask you between 5 and 6 main questions and some smaller questions to help you develop your answers. There are some important differences between Part 1 and Part 3 that you should really know about to give the examiner what they expect from you for a high score. So in Part 3, the questions are longer, more general, and more abstract. And the examiner has more freedom too. They're not just reading from a list like in Part 1. And there is one thing in particular that catches students out. Part 1 is about you, what you do, what you think, your experiences. Part 3 is about people in general, society, ideas. If you start talking about your own life, the examiner will likely interrupt you and redirect you. In Part 3, there are 3 sets of questions for the examiner to choose from. Set 1 is easier. Set 3 is the hardest. And here is the part that surprises many students. The harder your questions in Part 3, the better. That's because examiners choose Set 1 and 2 for candidates around a band 5 to 6. And for candidates likely to score a 7 or higher, they choose Sets 2 and 3. So if your examiner is asking you tough questions, that's a good sign. They think you can handle them. Let's look at one question and a sample answer from each set. The examiner will start this part by reminding you about your Part 2 topic like this. You've been talking about a famous person who's a good role model for younger people. And I'd like to ask you some more general questions about this. And then they ask you the first question. This question is from Set 1. Let's first consider becoming famous. Can you tell me what types of people tend to become famous in your country? This is one of the easier types of questions. It's asking you to describe and classify. So listen to this answer and see how I expand it to be longer. When I think about famous people, what comes to my mind are celebrities from the entertainment industry, like actors and musicians who are always in the spotlight. Athletes are also a big deal, especially those who excel in popular sports like football and tennis. Recently, social media influencers and content creators have become really popular too. So it seems people from different walks of life can become famous here. If in part 1 our answers were 20 or 25 seconds long, in part 3 you can talk for 45 seconds at a time. And giving examples is one of the best ways to extend your answers in part 3. So we talk a little about actors and musicians, then we add athletes, then we add influencers, and each example adds another sentence. There is also some lovely idiomatic language. Come to my mind, in the spotlight, a big deal, different walks of life. Now, you might be thinking my answers aren't usually this long, and that's fine. If your answer is shorter, the examiner will ask follow-up questions. That's normal, not a bad sign. They're trained to do that, but still, try to give an extended answer every time. Now let's move to the second set of questions, and the examiner will tell you they're switching focus. Maybe like this. Let's go on to talk about the importance of role models. How important is it for young people to have good role models? So, set 2 questions ask you to analyze, agree or disagree, or weigh things up. And here is an answer that does exactly that. I think it's important, but maybe not as critical as people sometimes say. On the one hand, having someone to look up to can really shape the choices young people make, especially when it comes to things like career, lifestyle, or how they treat other people. On the other hand, young people are also influenced by their families, their friends, and their own experiences. So role models are only one part of the picture. A couple of things to notice. First, this answer doesn't fully agree with the question. Don't be afraid to disagree with the examiner's question, but do it politely. Here, the answer starts with, I think it's important, but maybe not as critical as people sometimes say. So that's a soft disagreement. The examiner doesn't mind at all. There are no right or wrong opinions. Second, look at the structure. On the one hand and on the other hand. That's a good way to organize opposing ideas. And it's good in part 3. It's really a simple way to extend your answer and show that you can weigh up different sides. And now, set 3, the most challenging one. These questions are designed to push you to your limits. For example, could it be said that celebrity culture will one day be seen as the defining characteristic of the 21st century? That's a tough one. It's long, abstract, and the phrase defining characteristic. What does it mean? So here is an important tip. If you don't understand a word in part 3, you can ask the examiner. Just say something like, I'm sorry, what do you mean by defining characteristic? Or, do you mean the main feature of this century? In part 3, you can ask the examiner to explain what a certain word means, or you can ask to repeat the question. In part 1, you can only ask to repeat the question. Okay, once you understand what they're asking, give the answer. Well, to tell you the truth, this is something I've never given very much thought to, but I guess it's possible. Maybe not so much where I come from, but certainly in some cultures, like the United States or in parts of Western Europe. Even political leaders are often treated like celebrities, and in sport it's the same. So yes, it might well be one of the things future generations look back on. The answer starts with a filler to tell you the truth and admits the candidate hasn't thought about it. That's completely fine. Again, try not to use it every time, but if you really have to think, keep on talking. After that, still try to answer the question directly. And if the examiner feels you're going off topic, they will interrupt you and probably ask the same question again and just move on to the next question. And that's part 3. So when you hear the examiner say, "Thank you, that's the end of this speaking test," I promise you, you'll be relieved. So that's the full speaking test from the first ID questions to the final thank you. And the more familiar this feels before you walk into the exam, the more confident you'll be when it actually happens. Don't forget to download the Ultimate IELTS Playbook using the link below. It's got the sample answers for the topics like hometown, work, studies, and our part 2 topic from this video too. And some extra materials for the rest of the test as we release them. And now let's continue to the next video in the Ultimate Series IELTS Reading. Choose academic or general training depending on which test you are taking. And thank you so much for watching me today. Good luck with your preparation and your exam.